My childhood best friend got rich and changed, or maybe I'm the one who changed. Throw away because I don't want this tied to my main. Also, English isn't my first language, but I've lurked here long enough to know how these posts go, so here it is. I 27F grew up in a small suburban neighborhood in California. You know the type: middle-class homes, well-maintained lawns, parents who mostly worked 9-to-5 jobs, and kids who rode their bikes until the streetlights came on. It wasn't a bad life, but it wasn't extravagant either. And then there was Olivia. Olivia was my best friend from the time we were 5 years old. She lived just down the street, and from the moment we met, we were inseparable. We had sleepovers almost every weekend, we passed notes in school, we even made plans to go to the same college together. We were those best friends, the ones you see in movies, the kind that feels like a sisterhood. But life doesn't work like the movies. Olivia's parents were always wealthier than mine. Not crazy rich, but they owned a few rental properties, her dad had some kind of investment firm, and her mom worked as an interior designer. They had money to spare, but they never flaunted it, at least not back then. Everything started to change when Olivia's dad made some kind of huge business deal when we were around 16. Suddenly, they weren't just comfortable, they were loaded. I'm talking new cars, a bigger house in a gated community, vacations to Europe, the whole 9 yards. Olivia went from being the girl who borrowed my sweaters to the girl who wore designer labels I couldn't even pronounce. At first, I tried not to let it bother me. She was still my best friend. Sure, she had to miss some of our usual sleepovers because she was suddenly so busy, but she always promised we'd make up for it. And when she got a new friend group, people who had the same kind of money she did, I told myself it was normal. But the thing is, I never fit into that world. I remember the first time I went to party with her new friends. We were 17, and someone's parents had rented out an entire rooftop venue for their birthday. I showed up in my Forever 21 dress and a pair of heels I borrowed from my mom, while the other girls were wearing designer brands and carrying bags that cost more than my family's monthly rent. I felt like an outsider. Maybe Olivia noticed because she tried. She really did. She always introduced me as her best friend since forever, and she would hype me up in front of her new friends. But it was clear I wasn't one of them. They weren't mean, exactly, but they weren't welcoming either. They'd give me that polite, tight-lipped smile and then turn back to their conversations about yacht trips and fashion weeks. By the time we went to college, things had shifted even more. We didn't go to the same school. She got into some elite private university in LA, and I went to a state school a couple of hours away. We still texted, but the calls became less frequent. The visits home, almost non-existent. And then she blew up. I don't know if any of you have ever heard of Olivia Carrington, not her real last name, obviously, but if you're into fashion or social media influencers, you probably have. She started posting high-end fashion content on Instagram, and somehow it just took off. She got sponsorships, brand deals, even invitations to exclusive events. Before I knew it, she had millions of followers, and her face was on billboards in LA. And me? I was finishing my degree, working a part-time job, and struggling to afford rent in a shared apartment. I told myself I was happy for her. I really did, and for a while I believed it. But then she came home for the first time in years. It was last summer. I was working at a coffee shop near our old neighborhood, saving up to move out of my crappy apartment. One day, out of nowhere, Olivia walked in. She looked insane, perfectly styled hair, a designer purse, sunglasses that probably cost more than my car. And when she saw me, she gasped and threw her arms around me like no time had passed at all. "Oh my God, Ellie," she squealed, using the nickname no one but her ever called me. "I was just thinking about you." We sat down for coffee, and for the first time in years, it felt like the old Olivia was back. She asked about my life, my job, my plans. She told me about her travels, the insane places she'd been, the celebrities she'd met. And then she hit me with it. "You should come to LA with me," she said, grabbing my hand. "Seriously, Ellie, I have a spare room. You wouldn't have to pay rent. You could start fresh. Maybe even work for one of my brands. I know so many people looking for assistance." For a second, I almost said yes. But then I thought about it, about how different we were now, about how I'd always been the one trying to keep up while she kept soaring higher, and about how I would never truly be part of her world, no matter how much she wanted to pull me in. So I turned her down. She looked genuinely hurt, but she didn't push it. We hugged, she promised to keep in touch, and then she left. And that was it. That was the last time I saw her in person. The second I stepped into Olivia's LA penthouse, I knew I was way out of my depth. The place was massive, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, sleek modern furniture, expensive art pieces on the walls. It looked like something from a high-end design magazine. And the people. They were the definition of elite. Models, influencers, actors, every single person in that room had the kind of effortless confidence that only comes with money and fame. They held cocktails in delicate crystal glasses, laughed in perfectly curated groups, and exchanged air kisses like they were in some kind of exclusive club. I clutched my cheap, thrifted purse a little tighter. Then Olivia appeared, and for a second it was like nothing had changed. She screamed when she saw me, ran over in her heels, and pulled me into a tight hug. "Ellie, I'm so happy you came." She led me around, introducing me to people I vaguely recognized from social media. Some of them were nice enough, but others barely looked at me. It was clear I wasn't one of them, no matter how much Olivia tried to act like I belonged. At some point, I slipped away to the balcony, needing air. The city stretched out below, glittering under the night sky. And that's when I heard the voices. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop, but when I heard my own name, I froze. "She's Olivia's charity case," a woman's voice said, dripping with amusement. "You know, the childhood best friend story? So cute. She's basically a relic from Olivia's old life." Someone else chuckled. "God, she does look out of place. She's not even wearing designer." I felt my stomach drop. I turned, expecting to see some catty influencers, but instead I recognized them. They were the same girls from high school, Olivia's old rich friends, the ones who had never truly accepted me. Now, years later, they were still laughing at me. I should have walked away. I wanted to walk away, but before I could move, Olivia appeared. "Oh my God, are you guys talking about Ellie?" she asked, smiling. For a brief, stupid second, I thought she was about to defend me. But then she laughed. "Yeah, she's definitely not used to this scene, but she's harmless," she said, waving a hand dismissively. "She's like my little piece of nostalgia." My little piece of nostalgia. Like I was some kind of souvenir from her past. Something inside me snapped. I turned and walked straight out of that penthouse, ignoring Olivia's voice calling after me. She texted me later that night. "Olivia, Ellie, where did you go?" I didn't reply. Next morning, I unfollowed her on everything. It's been a year since that night. A whole year since I walked out of Olivia's penthouse, since I deleted her number and cut ties with the person I once considered my sister. At first, I felt hollow. There was this strange emptiness inside me, like I had lost something fundamental. I kept thinking back to the times when Olivia and I were inseparable, when we would talk for hours about our dreams, when we swore that no matter what happened, we'd always have each other. But the truth was, I had been holding on to a version of Olivia that didn't exist anymore. Or maybe she never truly did. The first few weeks after cutting her off were the hardest. Every time I unlocked my phone, my fingers would hover over her contact. I had to fight the instinct to text her funny memes or tell her about some random thing that reminded me of our childhood. It felt unnatural, like trying to break a habit I had built over a lifetime. I avoided social media for a while, too. I didn't want to see her posts, didn't want to be reminded of the world she lived in now. But curiosity got the best of me one night, and I found myself scrolling through her Instagram. Nothing had changed for her. She was still living the high life, private jets, designer collaborations, exclusive events. In some ways, it was comforting to see that my absence didn't affect her. It made it easier to let go. But then, a few months later, something did change. One day, I got a notification. "Olivia tagged you in a post." I hesitated before clicking on it. It was an old photo, one from high school, of the two of us sitting on my bedroom floor, surrounded by notebooks and snacks. I remembered that night vividly. We had been making lists of all the things we wanted to do in life, mapping out our futures like we had any real control over them. Her caption was simple. "Some friendships never fade. Miss you, Ellie." I stared at it for a long time, unsure of how to feel. Part of me wanted to believe she meant it, that maybe, deep down, she missed me just as much as I had missed her. But another part of me, the part that remembered the way she laughed with her rich friends at that party, the way she dismissed me like I was nothing, knew better. She missed the idea of me. The childhood best friend she could reminisce about, the girl who made for a good sentimental Instagram post. But she didn't miss me, not really. I didn't like the idea of being a nostalgia prop in her perfect, polished life. So I didn't respond. I didn't comment, didn't like the post, didn't reach out, and eventually she deleted it. That was when I knew for sure I had made the right choice. In the months that followed, my life slowly started to take shape in ways I never expected. I got a new job, not at some flashy LA startup, but at a place where I actually felt valued. The pay wasn't amazing, but for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was drowning. I moved into a better apartment, not a penthouse with floor-to-ceiling windows, but a cozy little place that actually felt like home. I decorated it with thrifted finds and personal touches, filling it with things that made me happy instead of things that looked good for Instagram. I made new friends, real ones, people who didn't care about clout or appearances, people who showed up when I needed them, not just when it was convenient. And slowly, I started to feel like myself again. There were still moments when Olivia crossed my mind, When I'd hear a song we used to love or stumble upon an old inside joke we used to share. But instead of feeling that pang of sadness, I started feeling grateful. Grateful that I had known her, grateful for the years we spent side by side, but also grateful that I had walked away. Because if I had stayed in Olivia's world, I would have lost myself completely. One day, I ran into someone who knew her. I was at a coffee shop, waiting for my order, when I heard a familiar voice behind me. Ellie. I turned, and there she was, Sarah, one of Olivia's old rich friends, the same ones who had laughed about me being a charity case that night at the party. She looked exactly the same. Perfectly styled hair, expensive handbag, flawless makeup, but there was something in her expression I didn't recognize. Surprise, maybe even guilt. I haven't seen you in forever, she said, forcing a smile. How have you been? I shrugged. Pretty good, actually. She glanced at the barista, then back at me. So, are you still in touch with Olivia? There it was, the real reason she had stopped me. I debated how to answer. Not really, I said, keeping it vague. Sarah nodded, shifting uncomfortably. Yeah, she's been different lately. I raised an eyebrow. Different how? She hesitated, as if deciding whether or not to say more. Then she sighed. Just more distant. It's like she's always performing, you know, even with us. It's not like it used to be. She let out a small laugh, but it didn't reach her eyes. Maybe it never was. I didn't say anything. But as I watched her walk away, I realized something. Olivia had spent her whole life chasing the dream, fame, money, status, and she got everything she ever wanted. But at what cost? Because if even the people in her own world were starting to see through the illusion, then maybe, deep down, she was just as lost as I once was. Maybe Olivia changed. Or maybe she had always been running, so desperate to prove she was special, that she left behind every real connection she ever had. Maybe, one day, she'll wake up and realize that being admired isn't the same as being loved. But by then, I won't be there to remind her. I've finally moved on. And for the first time in a long time, I feel free.